hello, my dearest friends. Hello, how is everybody? How's everybody doing? How's everybody's October doing? I hope y'all are doing well. I hope that if you're like me and you're ready for fall weather and fall time fun, I hope you're having like some nice cool weather. I've got my, this is such an old sweatshirt from Hello Lovely box, but it's still one of my favorites. It's a skeleton next to a stack of books, and the back has the same graphic that says "Bury Me" next to my TBR. I wear it year-round, but it feels especially festive when I get to wear it in October. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in August and September. And the only reason that we're doing that is because these last few months I have really kind of not held my crap together very well. I've been behind on just about everything. And I'm sorry, I'm just a big hot mess, and I just need to remind, like, I'm not a professional, right? Like, this is definitely a passion project, these YouTube videos. I try to do my best and make best quality content, but, like, you know, I'm literally just a girl. I'm literally just a girl. Let's get into it, shall we? So, now for August, some of those weeks, most of those weeks, I did, like, either a weekly reading wrap-up or just a recent read type of video. So a lot of these are in those, I think I have maybe one or two where I go into detail. I may even have a few vlogs. Anyway, if you want more details, like more of my usual type of discussions, I will have links for those videos down below. Other than that, because these were so long ago, and my goal right now, y'all, is to get this video done and out. So these are going to be kind of quicker reviews for the first part of August. So in August, I read 12 books. I started out the month by reading The Wolf King and The Night Prince. I read those back to back. Those are fantasy romances. They were kind of going all around at the time when I was reading those. And I just fell into the hype train because of Sam from Sam Reads a Little. She really liked those, and I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed reading those. Those were so much fun. They're fantasy romance with werewolves, and there is like a kind of like almost, I don't know exactly what time period it is, but it feels very like Highlander reminiscent if you read historical romance. And he has a Scottish accent. There is a love triangle that's very complicated in book 2, so I feel like a lot of people aren't going to like that, but I have to say, I love the fantasy world, I love the characters, I thought these were a ton of fun. They were giving me kind of nostalgic vibes for like Twilight, but in an adult setting, even though up to this point there aren't any vampires in there. And I will also say, this is one of the few books that I have read with a love triangle where I actually feel extremely conflicted about who I want her to end up with. So I love this series. I thought it was very fun. It's very well worth the hype, and I gave both of them 5 stars. So then I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I did enjoy this. This is the one where she is married, and then her husband is in, like, I think it's a plane crash. He goes missing, believed to be dead. She grieves for him, and then she ends up becoming engaged to another man and falling in love with him when her husband comes back and is like, I actually was alive this whole time fighting to come back to you. And it is extremely angsty. It is very complicated. It is beautifully written. I really, really, really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4.5 stars. Not my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid, but really high up there. Like, I really enjoyed that one a lot. And if you were looking for, again, like another love triangle, like angsty, beautifully written, like, you have got to give that one a shot because it was so beautiful. It really captured that feeling of complicated adult love and how it's not always easy, but it is so beautiful. And I just freaking loved it. Like, I loved it. Okay, and then I read another banger. I read Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. I loved this book. This is one of my favorite Brandon Sanderson's books. Now, this was a little bit hard for me at some points because the one thing I don't like about Brandon is some of his books, I'm looking at you, Edge Dancer, can lean into this sort of like teenage boy, kind of a little silly, a little goofy, a little inappropriate type of sense of humor, and I am just like rolling my eyes, and it doesn't pop up in his adult books as much as it does in his young adult books. We actually started reading him for his young adult books because I had a boy who was 14 at the time, and we were having a hard time finding any books written that he would want to read. They were all romance heavy, they were all female leads, and Brandon had a young adult series, I think it was called Steelheart, that my son just loved. And so that's actually how we got into Brandon Sanderson in the first place, other than I'm from Utah, he's from Utah, he was a local author, like I've seen and heard of him for years. So I've been reading Brandon for well over a decade, and I don't love his young adult books as much, except for the one, what's that one with the ship that's called Ship and Doomslug? I love that series, and I don't feel like that has as much of this humor. Anyway, this is Brandon's first fantasy romance. I adored this. By the time I got to the end of this book, I was almost sobbing. This is such a complicated type of romance where it just, honestly, it is so hard to explain because it does have a lot of details of the Cosmere, and there is like someone who can see in nightmares, and then there is someone who like is a nightmare. Like, it's just beautiful, and I loved this. I love this so much. I do feel like you could read this as a standalone if you haven't read Brandon's books, but I also would say if you are a fantasy romance reader, don't go into this expecting smut, don't go into this expecting a typical fantasy romance, but if you are a fantasy reader who wants more of a sweet, beautiful romance, like, you have got to try this. Like, or if you just want a sweet, beautiful, epic romance, you've got to try this. But don't go into this if you're looking for a smutty romance, because that's not what it is. Okay, and then I read The Brightest Light of Sunshine. I gave this one 3 stars. This had a lot of things that made it compulsively readable for me. This is an age gap romance. There is some like emotional damage, emotional trauma between them. I really enjoyed this a lot. I did have some problems with the writing, and I did have a little bit of problems with how quick it was resolved towards the end. So it was still fun. I enjoyed it, and I would definitely read from this author again. Okay, and then I read Chance at Love by Beverly Jenkins. This was for the Reid Appreciation Society. We have a full discussion up on Jen's channel. I'll have that link down below. There were some really good thoughts, some great thoughts from members of who just read the book and chimed in the comments. Like, those discussions are always so fun. We have our next Reid Appreciation Society coming up in November. This is probably one of my least favorite Beverly Jenkins. Loved the heroine, loved the found family. The hero was so watered down and diluted for one of the first times ever. I don't feel like I've ever read a hero this meh from Miss Bev ever. And again, it had a very sort of like ending and danger element that was added, sort of felt like at the last minute, and I gave this one 3 stars, but it was still good. And I mean, I love Beverly Jenkins, but this is definitely one of her weaker ones in my opinion. Then I read The Lovely Return by Carian. I gushed about this. This is one of my favorite books I've read this year. Beautiful, emotional, complicated romance, full of nuance and depth with a beautiful slow build. This is reincarnation. This is age gap. This is a second chance. It is so beautiful. And if you like a love story, a romance, it does have a happily ever after, that takes its time and makes the characters kind of work and go through life to get their happily ever after, like, this is a book for you. Like, I loved it so freaking much, and I just am going to be talking about it forever because it moved me almost to tears, and I don't cry often in books, and I loved that one. Okay, and then I read Dark Places by Gillian Flynn, and I gave this one 3 stars. I honestly can't even remember. I do feel like this one had great build-up, but I feel like the ending was a little anticlimactic, and it was kind of easy to tell where it was headed. I do have a full review of this. I can't remember much about it. It obviously isn't a book that stuck with me. But again, it did have Gillian Flynn's like typical fast-paced, grab you by the throat type of writing. I just didn't feel like the payoff was satisfying. So I think I gave it 3 stars. I don't think I gave it 4 stars. Okay, and then, so these are the books that I haven't mentioned at all. The ones that the previous 8 I just talked about, I have, if you want more in-depth reviews that maybe you missed, I have videos, they'll be linked down below. These are new. So then I read Viscount in Love by Eloisa James. So this is something I have on my Patreon that I'm really trying super hard to do every single month, is my patrons get to suggest a book to me. And I think this is the $5 and up tier. They get to suggest a book, and then I will read it and review it in a video just for patrons, but it's not like an exclusive review, so I'm still going to talk to you about it, but that video is just for the patrons. So this was a book that was recommended by a patron named Erin. I talk about her a lot. She's on Instagram. Her @ is She Is Too Fond of Books. I'll have her linked down below. If you're on Instagram, you should follow her because she has impeccable taste in books. Like, I love her taste in books. We do have, like, for the So Delicious tier, the highest tier on my Patreon, we have a book club where we do live shows, and we have such great discussions in those live shows, and Erin is almost always there, and she makes me think about things. She will make you think about things. Anyways, sorry, Erin, if this is embarrassing to you, but so she suggested this book. This is a historical romance. So this is book 1 in the Accidental Bride series by Eloisa James, and let me just tell you, I adored this book. This feels like peak historical romance. So I give this book 5 stars. This is about our heroine who can't read, and that is something that is kind of mentioned a lot about what makes her value, for lack of a better word, kind of decrease, is that she's not educated, she can't read. She can't read for a very specific problem, like she has a learning disability, but she very much internalizes that and feels like she is less than and not as desirable as other women or young ladies who are more accomplished than she is. Her sister has made just a great match to the Viscount in this book, and her sister is very vapid, she is very vain, and she is very set on things that are proper and things that you must do, and she herself talks down to our main character quite a lot. Now, our Viscount, he is a very stern, stoic man, and he ends up being the guardian of his niece and nephew, who were his sister's children. And so one of the main things that he is worried about is who is going to be here to raise these children and love them, because he believes that, you know, the girl that he's going to marry, our heroine's sister, is not interested in that at all. And it's evident, like, they have a meeting right off the bat, and she's like, I don't want anything to do with those kids. Send them away. Send them to, like, school. Send them with the governors. Like, I'm not raising those kids. So our Viscount hero is really not thrilled about that because he loves these kids, he loved his sister, they come from kind of dubious circumstances for their parentage, and our Viscount is just a good man who wants to look out for them. So it ends up that the sister, our heroine, the sister asks the heroine to kind of help step in and take care of them until she gets to marry the Viscount. And this, of course, is when our heroine and the Viscount actually fall in love, and there is some circumstances involving the sister where she decides not to marry the Viscount, and the Viscount then proceeds to go after our heroine, and it's an arranged marriage. It's beautifully done. This is just such a charming book. I was grinning the whole time I was reading this. If you're looking for a happy book that has great banter, that has great characters, that has good emotional beats, not just of happy times all the time, but like characters really trying to figure out who they are and where they fit into the world, it's just, I can't recommend this book enough. Like, I loved it so much. I give it 5 stars. It's one of my favorite historicals that I've read this year for sure. Okay, and then I read My Beautiful Enemy by Sherry Thomas. So this is actually the book that we read for my So Delicious tier book club in August. So I do have an exclusive reading vlog. I'm so sorry, you guys. I know I keep mentioning Patreon, but I know that can be frustrating if you aren't someone who can or wants to, like, financially support a patron. Like, I totally get it. I do. But it's something that is, like, really important to me, and I don't have a big channel, but I have a really beautiful, close-knit community of people that I just am so thrilled to have. So I am going to mention it because, you know, if I'm anything on this channel, I'm just really real, hopefully, and I love my patrons. So this was our book that we did for our book club, so we do a live show, and then I do an exclusive reading vlog where I just read it and vlog it for them. And I'll tell you that I gave this book 5 stars. This was such a beautiful, unique, diverse historical romance, unlike anything I've ever read. And it had that classic angsty Sherry Thomas feel that I adored this book. I feel like this month in August, I had this one and The Lovely Return by Carian that were both, like, full of depth of emotion, and there were complicated feelings in the relationship, and there were people who were, like, working for this love, and I just love books like that, and I feel like they are getting harder and harder to find in romance, and this delivered 100% on that for me. So I enjoyed this a lot. 5 stars, highly recommend it. Okay, and then I read Scoundrel Take Me Away by Louisa Darling. So this is an author that is new to me this year. This is the third book in her series, and this one so far is my least favorite. It was still fun. It was still great. It was still charming. It had great romance, had great banter, but it didn't have the emotional punch and satisfaction that the previous two had for me, so I give this one 4 stars. This is basically the youngest sister that we meet in the first book. She has now gone abroad, she's received an education, she has traveled, she has some experience, and she comes back to her brother, who is like her half-brother, and he was in the second book, and his wife is pregnant, and so our heroine comes to kind of help watch over and take care of things like that, like be there for her sister-in-law when she's gonna have a baby. Our heroine, from the time that she was like a teenager, has been kind of obsessed with this masked highwayman. Like, she's had a crush on him forever. She would like set traps for him on his road so that he would like have to stop, and she was hoping to seduce him, and sometimes she was a little successful and sometimes she wasn't. And they had this very fun but very much teenage girl type of vibe, you know, but it kind of was something that has hung around with her for a really long time. Now, the man in disguise is a duke, and he has a big role in the previous books where he has really kind of been a cause of pain for her sister and her reputation. So our heroine herself doesn't have great feelings for this duke, and her brother and her sister-in-law have talked to the duke. They've kind of forgiven him, and they've brought him into like their little found family type of thing, but our heroine doesn't want to forgive him so quickly. So there is like an animosity to lovers type of situation in here, combined with she still has feelings for this masked highwayman, combined with the law who's coming down, they're closing in, they're trying to figure out who this highwayman is. So it's got a lot of elements that would make this a really fun read. And it did seem to lean a lot into their physical chemistry and like the taboo nature of that, because he's masked and he doesn't know who you know, like, she doesn't know who he is, and that was a factor in the previous 2 books, but I felt like they still had a lot of emotional heart, and this one did too, but it just didn't wow me quite as much as the other 2 did. So I did read this one physically, and I listened to the first 2 audiobooks, and her audiobooks are narrated by Mary Jane Wells, who just does such a fantastic job that I can't help but wonder if I had listened to the audio. I think it may be out now, or it's coming out soon. Narrated by Mary Jane Wells, maybe I would have loved this more. But still, 4 stars is still pretty good, so that one was a good one. And then the last book that I read of the month is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This was a reread for me. I read this book well over a decade ago. I wanted to get back into it because I see people talking about it all the time and I couldn't remember much about it. This is a beautifully written, character-driven, rich, emotional fantasy, and I feel like that can be kind of rare. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. So now let's move on into September. So for September, I only read 7 books, and I kind of had a rough month in September. I felt like I kind of isolated myself. I didn't make a ton of videos. I didn't read a ton. I kind of withdrew a little bit from friends. It was a hard month for me. And August was also a hard month for me, but I physically, mentally, emotionally, and September I felt like that had kind of cleared, but internally I wasn't like better, and I feel like that definitely affected my reading and my videos. Like, I didn't make very many videos in September, if you notice. So I read 7 books. 2 of them were nonfiction. I was kind of on this journey of personal curriculum that I had seen this trend going around on TikTok. It's not a new concept by any means, but basically like personal study. It was spearheaded by this cute girl on TikTok where she just sets these curriculum for herself every month that she wants to learn and study, and I just love that. And I do feel like something that I have been missing amid all of the fiction is like studying and learning things, because I really love that too. So some of the areas I wanted to learn more about was like creativity. I'm always on the lookout for things to like fuel my creativity and how to beat art block type of things, and manifestation and mind work. So I read The War of Art, which was my least favorite book of the month. This one is been highly recommended for decades if you're dealing with creative burnout, creative block. I hated this book so much. This book was written by a man, and it literally feels like it is, because it is nothing but talking about if you don't feel like being creative, that's resistance, and you have to fight that resistance. You have to battle it. Like, it felt so much like this dude bro war cry to battle and fight your resistance, even if that meant, you know, abandoning your wife and her newborn child when she's asking you for help because you should actually be writing on your screenplay or working on your book. And I was just sort of like, is this guy for real? Like, I think that anybody who has a creative life, especially if you do that for your job, you know that you have to push past those creative blocks or burnout periods, because you got to get paid, right? So you've got to kind of try and figure out how to do that. And it's the figuring out of that can be difficult sometimes. And so I thought this book would be good. It's one that has been on my list for a long time. I have read Big Magic. Some of you recommended that. I've read it several times. I love that book. I think that is one of the best books about fighting creative blocks. This book was garbage. I would not recommend this book to anyone. There was nothing practical in here about how to get past art block or creative block, other than you just got to do it, man. You just got to do it. You got to go to war. And I just like, it was terrible. So the other nonfiction book I read is Mind Magic. This is all about manifestation and using your mind to like try and think more positively and kind of have that affect the outcome of your life. And I just sort of feel like, as someone who typically really struggles with depression and negative thinking, this feels like something that is very timely for me and something that I need to work on. This is written by a neuroscientist, and so there were a lot of really sciencey facts throughout this about how the mind works and how manifestation actually changes your brain chemistry, which I found really fascinating. I found this very helpful to try and get my brain on track to think more positively. I did give it 3 stars only because like I didn't really know how to rate this. Like, it was good. It wasn't life-changing. I don't have any critiques about the writing. It was nonfiction, but yeah, 3 stars. So that is my personal curriculum, what I did in September. So then the fiction books that I read. So I read If It Makes You Happy. This is one of the cutest fall romances I've read in a really long time. If you're looking for a fall romance and you haven't read this book, you have got to read this. It was so fun. I did give it 4 stars only because I feel like it was lacking a little bit in the emotional punch of what I'm looking for in a 5-star romance. And yeah, but overall, it was just fantastic. It was so fun. The vibes in this were perfect. It was very cozy. It did actually go to some emotional places because the book begins with her leaving her, like she's getting a divorce, and her ex-husband is really quite cruel to her and says some things that she finds herself reflecting on that really kind of damage her opinion of herself and her confidence, and that's an issue through the whole book. She ends up going to this town and taking over this bed and breakfast that her mom ran when her mom passed away, and it's just a very cute story of her kind of big city girl coming to this small town world and trying to learn how to bake and how to like get along with people, because she doesn't really feel like she's a people person, but she feels like she needs people in her life, and it was just great. And of course, the love interest is a baker who is excellent at baking, so he can help her. He's a single dad, he's also divorced, and I just loved it. I thought their romance was great, I thought the vibes were great, I thought the writing was good. I really enjoyed that one a lot. And then I read The Enchanted Greenhouse. So The Enchanted Greenhouse is the second book in the world of The Spell Shop. I read The Spell Shop last year, really enjoyed it, gave it 5 stars. The Enchanted Greenhouse was kind of lacking a few things for me. I gave it 4 stars. Still really, really enjoyed it. So I really liked the whole setup for The Enchanted Greenhouse. I thought it was super, super cute. I really liked the whole thing that it's basically about our heroine who has made plants into sentient creatures, and that is something that is an absolute no-no. And so she was basically frozen as a statue and put into stasis as her punishment. She ends up getting awoken years later by someone who needs her help to bring these plants back to life. And so, like, I love the magicalness of this book. I love the whimsicalness of it. Yeah, I felt like this was just super cozy, very cute. I liked the characters. I liked the plants in here that were, like, sentient. I liked the little winged cat. It was charming and cozy and sweet, but it was just kind of lacking a little bit of something that I feel like sometimes cozy books can do for me. Like, it didn't quite have maybe the emotional resonance I was looking for, but it was fun, it was solid, it was beautiful, and again, like, it is warm and whimsical and just fun. So if you are looking for something cozy and charming, like, I would definitely recommend that. I did like The Spell Shop a little bit better. And then I read Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. So this was our September book that we read for my Patreon book club. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I have a whole reading vlog and a live show on my Patreon. It's not my favorite T. Kingfisher, but it's still like a really solid read, and I really liked the spin and uniqueness she gave to the Snow White fairy tale story in here. Yeah, but that live show also has great commentary on it. So if you want to join my Patreon, I do have a 1-week free trial. Make sure you watch the live shows even if you're not participating. Like, there's always really good discussion that happens in those. So Okay, and then I read The Work of Art by Mimi Matthews, which was my favorite book of the month. I gave this book 6 stars. Absolutely adored this historical romance. This was another one that my patrons picked for me to read, so I do have a dedicated review video on my Patreon as well. This one was recommended by Laura, and I loved this book. I loved it so much. This is every single thing that I am looking for in a historical romance. It was swoony, it was slow building, it had great characters. The hero in this felt very Aragorn-esque, like he was a very honorable and noble man. He's a damaged hero. He was injured in the war. He thinks that he's not worth anything anymore since he can't physically do the things he used to do. He ends up marrying our heroine, who is being pursued by this evil duke because she has heterochromia, and he likes to collect like obscure art, including people, and he wants her for his wife. She's a huge animal lover. She's got her dogs, she's got her horses, but the shining star in this is the relationship, the romance. It is such beautiful, slow build perfection. One of the best historical romances that I have ever read. This is going to be a comfort read for me for sure. I adored every single page, and I can't say enough good things about it. If you are looking for more yearning in your romances, this is the book for you. And then I finished out the month by reading Alchemised. I was pretty disappointed in this. I did read Manacled, absolutely loved Manacled, one of the best books I've read, regardless of genre or where it's from. I think Manacled is fantastic. I had some issues with Alchemised. I have a dedicated reading vlog to that I go into detail on there. So I am still happy that I own it. I'm happy that the author is getting paid for her work, and yeah, but it was disappointing for me for sure. So anyway, those are the books that I read in August and September. Thank you so much, my friends, for being here. Let me know what your favorite book in September was, and if you just want to let me know that you were here, please leave me an apple emoji, and I will see you on my next video.